I stood frozen, gripping the edge of the table so hard my nails nearly sank into the wood. On the giant LED screen at the front of the conference room, a cold message glared back at me. Horizon files permanently deleted. Charles Raymond, Virotech COO, stood there with his arms crossed, his eyes unblinking, that crooked half-smirk dancing on his lips. Almost 50 colleagues sat stiff, no one daring to move an inch. Outside the glass wall, San Francisco's morning fog draped the Salesforce Tower in a ghostly shroud. Inside, the air reeked of stale coffee and sweaty tension. "This is a strategic decision," Charles said, his voice flat as if he were reading a quarterly expense report. "Horizon no longer aligns with our new direction. We're restructuring to focus entirely on our core product." Each word stabbed my ears like needles. "My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 33, head of strategic customer development. Horizon wasn't just another project, it was the dream. The ticket to push Virotech into the AI-driven customer service space, to finally stand toe-to-toe with giants like Salesforce and HubSpot. Horizon promised at least a 30% boost in revenue from major corporations, plus an opening into the integrated consulting market, something our competitors were still scrambling to figure out. But to Charles, all of that was just a long-term cost with no immediate ROI. The man was obsessed with cold, sterile numbers, ROI charts, endless OKRs. He would never understand that it's people who keep clients loyal, not shiny new features or dry financial statements. I remembered all those sleepless nights sketching out Horizon's first prototypes, driving at 4 a.m. to conferences in Sacramento, those late-night pizza sessions with the dev team tweaking every line of chatbot code. I missed my sister's wedding, my parents' anniversary, all to prove that human connection could become money, market share, pride. And now, all of it vanished with one single keystroke. A sharp clatter echoed. Charles signaled IT, "Delete the backups on the main server too. I want no traces left." The IT guy hesitated, sweat drenching his collar, but he lowered his head and obeyed. I felt my heart crack open, not just because a project was killed, but because my belief, my ideals, all those invisible sacrifices of the past year were crushed right there in front of me. Charles turned to me, his stare razor sharp. "Ethan, you'll start over. 3 months. If you don't deliver, you know the consequences." He didn't have to raise his voice. It was calm, measured, and that made it even colder. I swallowed hard, forcing down the knot in my throat. At the far end of the table sat Linda, the only colleague who ever dared to challenge Charles to defend Horizon. Our eyes met. She gave me a small nod, lips pressed into a thin line. She was saying, "Don't break, you're not alone." But stand up now. I had nothing prepared. All the evidence, the data, the work, all gone. I wanted to charge forward, to scream at Charles, to smash his laptop against the floor, to hurl my half-drunk Starbucks cup at those hollow "Innovation starts here" posters. But I stayed still, because I remembered what my dad used to say, "Never strike until your hand grips the weapon tight." And then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down. A familiar name lit up the screen. Mark Kessler, Managing Partner, Avalon Capital. The text, "Call me ASA, urgent opportunity." I almost laughed. In the exact moment everything crumbled, someone was tossing me a lifeline. But was it a trap, or the real way out? Charles kept droning on about restructuring, cost optimization, a future with no room for feelings. I didn't hear a damn thing. All I felt was the pounding of my heart like war drums. Mark. I met him at a tech conference in Seattle last year. He'd asked about Horizon, about how I could turn meaningless relationships into actual revenue. I thought he was just being polite. But now, why reach out at this exact moment? I clenched my fist, the cold edge of my phone digging into my palm. A single question echoed through my mind. Is this the chance to escape this sinking ship, or just the last mirage before drowning? I took a deep breath, locked eyes with Charles, then shifted my gaze to Linda. She nodded again. This time her look held no fear, only quiet faith. The room felt dead silent. I pressed my hand to my chest pocket, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Everything around me blurred, leaving only the pulse of that buzzing phone. And right then, I knew. The real game was just beginning. And Mark, what did he really want? Had he been tracking Horizon all along? Was this the key to finally taking Charles down? I stepped out of that conference room, feeling like I was carrying the entire gray San Francisco sky on my back. The noise behind me faded, disappearing completely as the heavy door slammed shut. My phone kept vibrating softly, Mark's message still lighting up the screen. I flipped to my contacts, eyes pausing on Avalon Capital, a giant investment firm out of Manhattan, the kind that hunted undervalued ideas, or more precisely, people buried alive by corporate machinery. I remembered the first time I met Mark at a tech conference in Seattle. It was a crowded dinner, red wine swirling in crystal glasses, CEOs bragging about fresh deals. Me, just a mid-level leader then, sat in a corner, catching up on client emails between bites. Mark walked over and tapped my shoulder. "You're Ethan Miller, right? The mind behind Horizon?" I was stunned. Who cared about some young strategist in a sea of Armani suits? But Mark wasn't like the rest. He asked how I turned small talk into six-figure contracts, why I believed in people more than dry metrics. I just laughed back then. I thought he was making polite conversation. But tonight, that message felt like a needle piercing through the chaos in my mind, jolting the last piece of clarity I had left. I hit call. My heart pounded so hard it echoed in my skull, sweat gathering at my temples. Mark's voice came through, deep and unwavering. "Ethan, I heard what happened at Virotech. I've got people on the inside. I don't have much time, so listen carefully. I want you at Avalon. Lead our strategic customer development division." I froze. "We're ready to pay triple your current salary, plus equity. Most importantly, full creative freedom to build whatever you want, even Horizon." A cold draft slipped down the hallway. I shivered, unsure if it was the air or the sheer insanity of the offer. "Horizon, it's dead," I whispered, my voice strangled. Mark laughed, low and sharp. "You really think an idea lives or dies because of a PowerPoint file? Horizon lives in your head, in the way you see customers as real people, not just data points. No one can delete that." I clutched the phone tighter, nails digging into my palm until I felt a sting of blood. Suddenly, memories came crashing back like waves. That summer night, eating barbecue at a big client's home. Their son, face smudged with soot, running around roasting marshmallows. The father pulled me aside and whispered, "I've never seen anyone care about my family like you do. I signed this contract because I trust you, not because of price." Or the night I sat in a hospital waiting room, keeping a marketing director company while his wife was in early labor. The next morning, he signed a 3-year renewal, ignoring offers from competitors. Charles would never understand moments like these. To him, I was just a PR guy masquerading as a strategist, wasting budget and time. Mark's voice snapped me back. "Ethan, decide now. Avalon's about to launch something big, and we need someone who understands human nature, not just someone who can juggle KPIs." I glanced out the long glass hallway. Far down, the conference room still glowed. Charles was probably still rambling about restructuring, words spilling out like an assembly line. I whispered into the phone, "If I join, I'm bringing Horizon's philosophy with me. I won't just be a hired gun." Mark let out a sharp, delighted laugh. "That's exactly why I want you. Horizon isn't a project, it's the future, and I want that future at Avalon." In that instant, I felt a hammer hit my chest. This was my way out. This was the answer. But then, another question crashed in. Could I really leave it all behind? Walk out now? What about my team? What about Linda, the one person who always believed in Horizon? I glanced at my phone and saw a Slack notification from Linda. "Ethan, don't let Charles bury you. I've got your back, no matter what." I bit my lip and took a deep breath. Charles could delete files, slash budgets, smear my name, but he couldn't erase trust. He couldn't erase the way I connected with each heart, each story, each smoky backyard dinner. I clenched the phone. "Mark, I'm in." On the other end, Mark answered crisply, "Good. Tomorrow morning, you'll get your flight, contract, and equity details in your email. Welcome to the team." I exhaled, long and heavy, like pushing a boulder off my chest. A sudden thought flickered through me, almost making me laugh out loud. Charles didn't realize that by deleting Horizon, he had just opened the door for the very blow that would destroy him. My steps felt lighter. That endless hallway now felt like a runway waiting for takeoff. But inside, questions surged like a rising tide. How would the clients react? Would Linda come with me? And was this only the beginning of an even bigger battle? I returned to my office, that small room at the end of the hallway, the one where I used to plaster Horizon's diagrams on the walls like secret maps. I closed the door, leaned against my desk, and stared at my laptop screen, waiting for my next move. My inbox overflowed with unread emails, most of them from upper management demanding a revised proposal within 48 hours. I pressed my lips together. Charles didn't know yet. He had no idea that by tonight, I would no longer belong to Virotech. A notification from Mark popped up. My flight to New York, meeting schedule, preliminary contract, everything was set. A new path, faster and more ferocious, lay wide open in front of me. But then, Linda's Slack message blinked. "Ethan, are you okay? A few of us are talking about how we can support you. Don't let him destroy the person you are." I froze. Linda, the only colleague who dared to stand up during tense meetings, who once lost her bonus for challenging Charles's absurd decisions. I remembered that summer afternoon when Linda pulled me out back, handed me an ice-cold soda. "You know, Horizon isn't just a project, it's the way you inspire us. Without it, I don't even know what to believe in anymore." I clenched my phone. I knew I had to leave. But then there was Linda, and the young ones who still believed there was room for real human connection, for genuine emotion. Suddenly, my phone rang, a strange number. I answered. "Ethan, this is Julia, CEO of Orion Networks. I heard about Horizon. I want to meet you." I went still. Orion, Virotech's biggest rival. The company that just raised nearly $500 million and was prepping a massive AI solutions launch. I don't understand. Why reach out now?" Julia chuckled softly, her voice sounding like metal clinking against glass. "Ethan, we've been following Horizon for a while. The way you handle clients, how you turn human relationships into business power, that's something no MBA can teach. You've built a trust no one else in this industry even dreams of." I held my breath. "We want you as a strategic advisor. No strings. You can still join Avalon, but we want to acquire the philosophy behind Horizon, not the files, but the mindset." I leaned against the wall, my face burning hot. One side was Avalon, complete creative freedom, full trust. The other was Orion, powerful, ready to weaponize my philosophy as a direct strike against Virotech. My heartbeat pounded like a war drum. Sweat trickled down my back. Julia kept going, her voice sharp. "We'll pay $2 million for an exclusive 1-year advisory. You don't have to leave Avalon. Just share your vision, your philosophy, your approach to building customer relationships." My knees nearly buckled. $2 million. And not to start from scratch, but to build on the one thing I believed in most. Suddenly, a knock on the door. Linda stepped in, her eyes more determined than I had ever seen. "I heard," she whispered. "I'll go with you, wherever you go. Charles doesn't deserve our souls." I looked at her. In that moment, I saw every late-night pizza with the engineering team, the dawn scrambles to prep prototypes, the laughter on the baseball field. I finally understood. Horizon was never just a project. It was a community, a shared heartbeat. I picked up the phone and said to Julia, "I agree, but I have one condition. Linda comes with me, and anyone from the old team who wants to come, I vouch for them. If not, I'm out." Silence on the line. Then Julia burst out laughing. "You're different, Ethan. That's exactly why we want you. Deal." I set the phone down. Linda laughed and then hugged me tight. "We'll show them, Ethan. We'll show the whole damn world that people matter more than numbers." In my mind, an even bigger question started to blaze. With Avalon and Orion behind us, would Horizon become the weapon that destroys Virotech, or would it be the key to building a whole new empire? My heart thundered. My entire body felt like it was on fire. I knew by tomorrow morning, nothing would ever be the same. Me, Linda, and everyone who still believed, we were about to start a brand new chapter, a chapter Charles could never, ever imagine. I woke up at 4 a.m., the fog still draped in thick white sheets over the streets below my tiny Soma apartment. I stood by the window, watching the car lights snake toward the Bay Bridge like a silent procession. Linda texted, "Are you ready?" I replied simply, "It's time." Before leaving, I stuck a handwritten note on my mirror. "People matter more than any report." That note had followed me through countless camping trips with clients, early morning coffees with CEOs, and quiet moments hugging young colleagues who were breaking under deadlines. I walked into the company lobby, past the giant poster screaming, "Innovate or die." Today, I wasn't Ethan Miller, that touchy-feely strategist Charles used to mock. Today, I was the man holding the final blade. When I pushed open the main conference room door, the place was packed. Charles stood at the front, droning on. "This is the Q4 restructuring plan. After eliminating Horizon, we'll focus all resources on the analytics suite." He froze when he saw me. "Ethan, perfect timing. We're discussing your new role after Horizon," Charles said, a glimmer of smugness flashing across his face. I nodded slightly, stepped forward, and placed my briefcase on the table. Linda stood right behind me, eyes blazing, gripping a folder tightly. A few other colleagues quietly nodded. We didn't need words. I knew they were ready. I pulled out a stack of papers, my voice low but firm. "Charles, I don't have a new role here. Today, I'm officially resigning." Silence swallowed the room. Someone dropped a pen, the clatter exploding like a gunshot. Charles stared, then tried to force a laugh. "You're kidding, right? You can't walk out in the middle of a critical transition." I looked him dead in the eye. "I can, and I am." I slid the folder toward him. Inside, my resignation letter, a list of everyone leaving with me, and the announcement of my partnership with Avalon and Orion. He flipped through each page, his face draining from pale to furious red. "You're betraying me, betraying this company," Charles screamed, his voice cracking. I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not betraying anyone. I just refuse to keep selling my soul to meaningless numbers." Linda stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "And I'm going with him." Then, one by one, others started rising. 1, 2, 5. More than 10 people stood up, gathering their things, pulling off their company badges. A hush swept through the room like a rising tide. A few stayed frozen, staring blankly at the floor. But most of them, their eyes began to glow, as if someone had finally cut their chains. Charles trembled, watching the sea of people drop their badges onto the table. You can't. Who's going to run the projects? Who will handle the clients?" I took a deep breath. "Don't you see, Charles? Those clients didn't stay for the Virotech logo. They stayed because they believed in us, in people, and you just erased all of that." I held up the final folder. "Horizon isn't dead. It's just moving somewhere it'll finally be valued." Phones began to ring non-stop. Email notifications flooded my watch. Client contract termination, urgent meeting request, immediate partnership withdrawal. Sweat glistened on Charles's forehead. He stumbled backward, almost tripping over a chair, his face ghost white. Linda tugged at my arm. "Let's go, Ethan. Don't look back." I turned, walking out of that room into the cool glow of the San Francisco morning. Behind me, Charles's shouts echoed, thin and desperate. I didn't turn around. In that moment, my shoulders felt lighter than they had in years. As we passed through the lobby, the security guard gave a slight bow. A few front desk employees stood and applauded softly, eyes bright. I looked at Linda. She smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I squeezed her hand and nodded. "We just started something bigger than any KPI sheet could ever capture," I whispered. Linda laughed through her tears. "And this time, we're not fighting alone." We stepped outside into the misty sunlight. A black SUV waited, the driver holding the door open. I looked up at the gray sky, but inside me, the sun was already rising. Could we, me, Linda, and everyone who believed, really build a new empire, or would we be crushed by the next corporate giant? My heart pounded, but for the first time in years, I knew one thing for sure. I was alive. The SUV glided slowly down Market Street, sliding past rows of blinding billboards. I leaned back, eyes still fixed on the message from Avalon. "Welcome to your new home, ready for the big game." Linda sat beside me, her eyes still puffy from crying, but now shining like someone who had finally broken free from an invisible cage that held her for years. I remembered every word Mark said during our emergency meeting right after we left Virotech. "Ethan, we don't just want Horizon. We want you to build a new team from scratch. We want real human beings, not Excel models." The new headquarters sat high inside a towering glass building in Manhattan, where the whole city stretched out below like a living canvas. I stepped into the main conference room. Blank strategic boards on the walls, no fake slogans, no KPI dashboards blinking like traffic lights. Linda and a few of my old teammates lined up behind me, each carrying a laptop and a folder of dreams. Mark stepped forward, his voice pulsing with energy. "This isn't a place for just anyone. This is a playground for those brave enough to put trust above spreadsheets." I shook his hand. I felt every bone in that grip, real, firm, nothing like those cheap, oily handshakes at networking events. "I have one condition," I said, locking eyes with him. "We keep Horizon's philosophy intact. We don't turn clients into numbers. We don't turn employees into tools." Mark threw his head back and laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Wait and see. This is going to be a symphony, and Horizon is the lead melody." That first morning at Avalon, I sat in my new office. On my desk, a single cup of black coffee and the worn leather notebook I'd carried since my first days at Virotech. I flipped through each page, scribbled notes from barbecue dinners, memories from that night at the hospital with a client, a photo of a CEO's dog I once comforted after its surgery. Every page was a vein, a living thread of connection that Charles could never see. By noon, while I was in a strategy meeting, the emails started pouring in. "Ethan, we're ready to sign again if you're leading. I've been waiting for the day you left Viratech. Let's start fresh." In just 48 hours, 7 of Viratech's biggest clients announced they were ending contracts and opening negotiations with Avalon. Linda looked at me wide-eyed. "Can you believe this? We didn't even send out a single pitch. They came to us." I laughed softly, shaking my head. Because at the end of the day, people always choose heart. No one wants to be reduced to a Q4 customer feedback metric. 3 weeks later, Viratech made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Viratech faces biggest crisis in history, loses over 60% of key clients. Charles was suspended shortly after. A former colleague texted me, "Charles is blaming everyone, but no one's listening anymore." I didn't feel triumphant. Strangely, I felt light. That afternoon, I stepped out onto Avalon's 40th floor balcony. Manhattan's wind rushed through my hair as I looked down at the crisscross of yellow and red lights, pulsing like the city's heartbeat. Linda brought me a fresh cup of coffee and leaned in close. "In the end, you proved it. Emotion isn't weakness, it's an asset." I squeezed her hand, staring into the distance. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's proving that what they dismissed was the foundation of lasting success. A sudden gust of wind ripped the note, "People matter more than any report," off the glass wall where I had temporarily stuck it. I lunged, but then stopped, watching it spin wildly through the air before vanishing into the sea of city lights. I smiled, because I no longer needed that note to remind me. Horizon wasn't a line on a wall anymore. It was my blood, my bones, every breath I took. This city, Avalon, Linda, and everyone who believed in real connection, they were now my living declaration. And for the first time after years of suffocating, I felt free. If you've ever been underestimated for caring too much, for choosing human connection over cold metrics, remember, they might laugh at you today, but tomorrow you'll be the one standing at the top. Not because you were cold, but because you led with your heart. Have you ever felt undervalued just for being someone who genuinely cared? If so, share your story. Maybe your story will give strength to someone out there who just needs one more reason to stand up.